The top stories tonight in Y News. The scheduled proclamation of winning party list groups on Thursday, May 19, will not push through according to the Commission on Elections. After almost half a year in detention, 2 Pharmally executives will be released from jail next month. The Department of Health will conduct a school-based COVID-19 vaccination program for children aged 5 to 11. The DOH confirms the first local transmission of Omicron subvariant BA.2.12.1 in the Philippines. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Tuesday, the 17th of May, 2022. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the Philippines and in other parts of the world. I am William Theo. We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts. First in the news, the Department of Health confirmed the local transmission of the more transmissible Omicron subvariant BA.2.12.1. However, the Health Department clarifies there is no community transmission yet. JP Nunez will tell us why.
The Department of Health detected 17 confirmed cases of the Omicron subvariant BA.2.12.1 in the country after 3 more infections were confirmed. The 3 new cases were all detected in Western Visayas, 2 local cases and 1 returning overseas Filipino from the United States. It previously announced the detection of 14 cases of the Omicron subvariant in Metro Manila and Puerto Princesa. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere clarifies there is no community transmission yet in the country.
Pag sinabi natin local transmission, confined siya dun sa area, hindi pang malawakan. Compared to community transmission, huge clusters of infection to. Marami ng mga cluster ng infection, tapos hindi mo na makita yung link ng bawat isang kaso sa isa't isa.
The health official said the agency and local government units are now responding to the local transmission of new subvariant by ramping up detection and isolation of cases and preparing their healthcare systems. DOH renewed its call for the public to get vaccinated against COVID-19. JP Nunez, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Department of Health will conduct a school-based COVID-19 vaccination program for children aged 5 to 11. The DOH hopes to hit 77 million fully vaccinated Filipinos by June 30, 2022. Rosalie Cos reports why.
The Department of Health revealed that it will hold school-based vaccination. It is now coordinating with the Department of Education as well as local government units. This was after the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases or IATF expressed its support for the full conduct of in-person learning for basic education both in public and private institutions.
So, magkakaroon tayo ng school-based vaccination na inaayos na lang po yung ating mga guidelines. Nakipag-usap na tayo, nakipag-coordinate na tayo sa mga taga-DepEd at saka mga LGU para tumulong ang DOH at saka ang LGU sa pagbabakuna sa mga schools na ito. Sinabi ko mas maaga na marami pa rin tayong mga school age 5 to 11 na pwede pang bakunahan.
Malacanang has reiterated COVID-19 vaccination is not a requirement for in-person learning. Meanwhile, 68.7 million Filipinos have already been fully vaccinated against COVID-19, according to the Department of Health. However, this is more than 8 million away from the target 77 million of the government before President Rodrigo Duterte formally leaves office on June 30, 2022. Thus, the DOH appeals once again to those who have yet to avail their second dose.
We will do our best to reach the 77 million fully vaxxed by June 30. Hiniling din ito ng ating Secretary of Health sa mga regional directors nung nagpulong-pulong kami.
The Health Department added there are 4.5 million Filipinos who are already eligible for their second shot. The department will also intensify their vaccination efforts in Calabarzon, Central Luzon, Central Visayas, Bicol, and Soc-Sargen. Meanwhile, Undersecretary Kabutahe also said the Health Technology Assessment Council, or HTAC, awaits further written requirements from the World Health Organization before releasing the guidelines on the administration of second booster dose for senior citizens and healthcare workers. Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The search is still ongoing for other positions in the cabinet of presumptive President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. The BBM camp has identified another two personalities that the Uniteam Bet wants to work with. Nel Maribohok is on the line to give us the details. Why live? Yes, Nel, good evening. Who are these personalities and what will be their position?
Yes, Will, good evening. Attorney Vic Rodriguez, Chief of Staff and spokesperson of presumptive President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr., confirmed to reporters that BBM had talked to former Labor Secretary Benny Laguesma and Susan Ople before leaving the country to Australia. Laguesma was asked to lead the Department of Labor and Employment, while Ople was asked to be head of the Department of Migrant Workers.
Yung dalawang taong binabanggit ko na kinausap ni President-elect Bongbong Marcos bago siya umalis ay si dating Secretary of Labor and Employment Benny Laguesma at si Ms. Toots Ople. Ito yung mga taong respetado sa larangan ng labor and employment.
Rodriguez said Laguesma and Ople have yet to accept the offer as they want to consult first their families and friends. He also insisted that currently there are no list of cabinet members, contrary to what others claim in social media.
Walang listahan. Ulitin ko, walang listahan. And the names that I will be announcing, I think are those names na talagang nakausap at meron kaming pahintulot na mabanggit man lang kung sila'y nakausap na o kinoconsider na bilang appointee ni President-elect Bongbong.
Meanwhile, Marcos Jr. flew to Australia so he can enjoy his last few days as citizen Bongbong before he formally assumes office as president, according to his spokesman, Attorney Rodriguez.
It's a private trip made by President-elect Bongbong with his family.
Minister met with Marcos Jr., who earlier received congratulatory message from the leaders of the US, China, Japan, and the EU. And that is our update. Back to you, Will.
Thank you, Nel Maribohok, reporting live. The Commission on Elections clarifies that any winning candidate can take their oath earlier than their assumption of office. Meanwhile, a petition is filed before the Supreme Court against the proclamation of presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Dante Amento reports why.
COMELEC Commissioner George Erwin Garcia explains that there is no certain law or stated in the Constitution which prohibits winning candidates to take their oath before June 30. What the law requires is the specific time, such as for elected president and vice president to assume office.
Basta ang usapan lang, mag-o-oath, number 1, at exactly, mag-a-assume at exactly 12:01, at number 2, dapat yung content ng kanilang oath ay yun nakalagay sa Constitution, sa Article 6 mismo. Eksakto dapat yun nakalagay because that is what is provided for by the Constitution. Hindi nakalagay doon that the oath should happen at exactly 12 o'clock of June 30.
Presumptive Vice President Sara Duterte recently disclosed that she will take her oath on June 19. Garcia adds there were Philippine presidents in the past who took their oath earlier than 12 noon of June 30. There is also no prohibition if a winning candidate will take oath several times.
In fact, tomorrow, after the proclamation of the 12 winning senatorial candidates, nobody can prevent them from taking an oath before even a commissioner of the commission election or before the chairman of the commission election.
Meanwhile, the petitioners Buenafe et al. Filed a petition before the Supreme Court. They urged the High Court to restrain Congress sitting as the National Board of Canvassers for President and Vice President from canvassing votes for presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and not to proclaim BBM as president until the resolution of their petition will be released. The petitioners also asked the Supreme Court to reverse the resolution by the COMELEC and Bank last May 10, which dismissed their petition to cancel COC of Marcos Jr. for the alleged false material representation. Meanwhile, the poll body believes that the issue will be duly deliberated and they will wait for any order from the court. But the Commission clarifies during canvassing, the issues that can be raised are limited. Other issues not pertaining to the canvassing can be filed through an election protest after the proclamation or assumption of office of a winning candidate.
Take note po, walang pre-proclamation controversy for the position of President, Vice President, Senators, and Congressmen. Walang pre-proclamation controversy. Except illegal proceedings of the board, illegal composition of the Board of Canvassers. Aside from that, you cannot raise any other issue.
Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the Department of Education, or DepEd, is now preparing the list of teachers' names who worked overtime during the May 9 polls. This after the Commission on Bank has approved in principle the additional honoraria for teachers and other members of the electoral boards. Janice Inhente reports.
Some of the teachers and school personnel who served as Board of Election inspectors on the May 9 elections extended their hours of duty due to malfunctioned vote counting machines and SD cards. As a result, the Department of Education immediately requested the Commission on Elections for additional compensation to electoral board members as payment for the extended hours rendered by BEIs. According to Director Marcelo Bragado of the Department of Education Public Affairs Office, almost 1,000 vote counting machines have malfunctioned at various polling places, while over 5,000 BEIs, support staff, and technicians should receive an overtime pay.
Ang tinitignan po natin dito na BCM at STD cards incidents po ng malfunctions o may mga problema o aberya ay sa kulang-kulang 1,000. So kung i-multiply po natin yung 1,000 na BCM at STD cards by 3 at mga support sa pagbeso, so baka times 5 po yan. So mga 5,000 po na tao na mabibigyan ng additional pay.
The Department of Education is now completing the list of teachers and school personnel who will receive the additional honoraria. Yesterday, the COMELEC announced that additional honoraria was approved by the NBank and will be given to teachers who worked overtime duty during the election. DepEd is thankful for the COMELEC's response to pay for the extended time served by teachers during the election.
Natutuwa kami at nabigyan naman ng positibong resulta yung aming request. At ang alam ko ay magbibigay ang COMELEC ng approved honoraria additional pay doon sa mga teachers po na extend ng more than 24 hours. So based sa aming initial discussion, hindi mababa ng 2,000 ang kanilang i-approve. Kasi request namin sana 3,000. Pero masaya kami kung ano mga amount, basta hindi mo bababa ng 2,000.
DepEd hopes that teachers will receive their additional honoraria until May 24. Janice Inhente, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
President Rodrigo Duterte has signed into law a measure that ensures the Armed Forces of the Philippines Chief of Staff will serve for 3 years. The AFP has welcomed the passage of the law, which they say will bring stability in the military organization. Leia Ilagan explains why.
It is high time for the Armed Forces of the Philippines to have a policy that will benefit the organization and not just an individual. Former Flag Officer in Command Vice Admiral Robert Empedrad says he is in favor of the new law that sets a fixed term for the AFP Chief of Staff and other key officials. Empedrad said the fixed term will help the continuity of the program in the AFP.
This one is good. It's good. It will sustain the long-term program of the armed forces, lalo na highly technical. So, mas maganda kung may grasp yung leaders in the modernization of the armed forces.
He added, it will give a bigger chance to the deserving officer to lead the organization.
It provides more professionalism. Yung talagang magagaling, yan yung mapopromote. So, hindi yung pa-stay mo ng matagal para i-promote mo. 1 year na lang, ipopromote mo pa. Yan is pinagbibigyan dahil classmate, dahil it's no longer based on merit and competence.
Meanwhile, in a statement, AFP spokesperson Colonel Ramon Zagala welcomed the passage of the law, which he says will bring stability to the organization. Republic Act No. 11709, which was enacted by President Rodrigo Duterte on April 13, states that a fixed tour of duty of 3 years will be imposed on the AFP Chief of Staff, Vice Chief of Staff, Deputy Chief of Staff. It will also be applied to the positions held by the commanding generals of the Philippine Army, Philippine Air Force, Flag Officer in Command of the Philippine Navy, Commanders of Unified Command, and Inspector General. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And in other news, after almost half a year in detention, 2 Pharmally executives will be released from jail next month, according to the Senate President Vicente Soto III. Their counsel, however, believes the 2 officials should have been released sooner. Harleen Delgado will tell us why.
Pharmally Corporate Secretary and Treasurer Mohit Dargani and Director Lincoln Ong will be released from detention at the Pasay City Jail next month. Senate President Vicente Soto III confirms this as the contempt order is extinguished when Congress goes into sine die adjournment on June 3. Dargani and Ong have been imprisoned for almost 6 months since their transfer from Senate custody last November 2021 after being cited in contempt by the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee chaired by Senator Richard Gordon. However, for their legal counsel, Attorney Don Capunan, the 2 Pharmally executives should have been released sooner. In a text message, Capunan claims they should have been released in February when a committee report was released, which they believe was deliberately characterized as preliminary to keep his clients in jail as long as Gordon could. Despite this, Capunan says the 2 Pharmally officials will come out of jail with their heads held high. He adds Dargani and Ong will be ready to face any charges to prove their innocence against what he calls unfair accusations made before the Blue Ribbon Committee. Capunan alleges the committee was used by Gordon as a platform for re-election. The senator has yet to comment on the matter. Harleen Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Land Transportation, Franchising and Regulatory Board reopens its appointment scheduling system for applicants of Transport Network Vehicle Service. A group of TNVS operators, however, calls for lenience in the application process in the agency. Asher Kadapan Jr. explains why.
The Land Transportation, Franchising and Regulatory Board encounters a problem in their appointment system in applying to become a Transport Network Vehicle Service. This is due to high volume of applicants while having a limited number of personnel who are required to process 200 applications per day. With this, the LTFRB was compelled to suspend the scheduling of appointment for the application process a week after its designated website opened on April 30. The appointment system resumes today, but since the application process started, some applicants were rejected due to insufficient requirements. The LTFRB asks rejected TNVS applicants to re-register online using a new email address. But a group of TNVS operators appeals to the LTFRB for a laxer process and requirements in the application.
Ang hiling lang po sana namin ay bigyan ng konting kaluwagan o bigyan ng isang magandang pagluluwag sa pagproseso ng mga requirements para makapasok at makakuha ng mga bagong Islam.
Despite the rigorous process, the TNVS community expresses gratitude to the LTFRB and the government in opening more slots in the said mode of transportation.
Nagpapasalamat kami at lubos na nagagalak sa pamunuan ng LTFRB at ng gobyerno natin na binigyan uli ng pagkakataon ang mga nagnanais na magkaroon ng mga case number o ang sinasabi nating pagsama sa TNVS mode of transport.
Based on LTFRB's resolution, 7,000 slots were open for applicants in the National Capital Region, 200 slots in Region 3, 500 from Region 5, and 150 in Region 6. The guidelines, including the application process and requirements to become a TNVS, can be checked through LTFRB's social media account. Asher Kadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Presumptive President Bongbong Marcos Jr. promised in his campaign to bring down the price of rice to 20 pesos per kilogram. However, a farmers group says it is impossible. The group reiterates their call to repeal the rice tariffication law. Aileen Cerudo will tell us why.
The only way for a 20 peso per kilo rice is for the national government to repeal the rice tariffication law, according to Farmers Group Kilusang Magbubukid ng Pilipinas. KMP Chairperson Emeritus Rafael Mariano explains the production cost for rice is too expensive to sustain low prices in the market.
Napakataas ng gastos o cost of production natin para makalikha ng 1 kilo ng palay. No? Kaya imposible yung 20 pesos per kilo na yan sa kalagayang umiiral itong rice tariffication law.
Under the rice tariffication law, the country can import rice from other countries with lower taxes. The farmers group also laments that despite the numerous importation, rice prices remain high.
Napatunayan na natin sa 3 taong nakaraan, bumabaha ng imported rice pero hindi naman bumaba ang presyo ng bigas, no? At sa ilalim ng nasabing batas sa rice tariffication law, hindi na rin pwedeng magbenta ng bigas ang National Food Authority sa lokal nating pamilihan.
Mariano explains that instead of implementing the rice tariffication law, Congress should pass the proposed National Food Self-Sufficiency Act into law. The law aims to boost the country's local production of rice in order for the country to no longer depend on importing supply abroad.
Kung palalakasin lamang yung lokal na produksyon natin ng palay at pagkain butil sa bansa, makakabit natin yung sariling kasapatan sa pagkain butil at matitiyak natin yung matatag, sustainable at umaasa sa sariling seguridad sa pagkain para sa bawat mamamayang Pilipino.
In an interview, Agriculture Secretary William Dar said the department eyes to allow the National Food Authority to sell rice to the beneficiaries of the Pantawid Pamilya Pilipino program or 4Ps. Meanwhile, the Agriculture Department is planning to launch a program to increase food production in the country and for supplies to be sufficient enough to be sold at a lower price.
Ultimate objective, pataasin yung productivity ng magsasaka. That means we want the farmers and fishers to be efficient producers, to be competitive. At pag sinabi mong efficient, mataas ang ani, pero yung kanilang pagbebenta sa consumers, mababa na yung presyo na nakikita natin sa ating mga neighboring countries.
Aileen Cerudo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The scheduled proclamation of winning party list groups on Thursday, May 19, will not push through, according to the Commission on Elections. The poll body, meanwhile, will pronounce the 12 winning senators tomorrow afternoon. Aiko Miguel details why.
The COMELEC and Bank, which seats as the National Board of Canvassers, have decided not to push through with the proclamation of party list groups initially scheduled on May 19, Thursday, 4 p.m. This is because they will still have to wait for the election results after the conduct of special elections in several barangays in Lanao del Sur set on May 24.
No proclamation in the meantime of the winning party list groups, which can only happen after the receipt of the results of the province of Lanao del Sur.
Commissioner Garcia earlier explained today that the system to proclaim the party list groups with guaranteed seats is complicated.
It should be based on the total number of voters who actually voted for the party list. Take note, total number of voters who actually voted for the party list. Hindi po pinag-uusapan yung total number of voters sa Lanao del Sur. Whoever will get the number 1 seat or the number 1 in rank will have automatically the 3 seats. Whether they will get 8%, 10%, whatever, they will only get the maximum 3 seats. Kung sino yung number 1 na yon.
The poll body will resume their session on May 25 for the canvassing of party list votes, including the election returns from the special elections that will be held in several barangays in Lanao del Sur. Time and venue will be announced. Meanwhile, the NBOC have already decided to proclaim the 12 winning senators tomorrow after the recommendation of the Supervisory Committee. The 12 winning senators are Robin Padilla, Loren Legarda, Rafi Tulfo, Win Gatchalian, Chiz Escudero, Mark Villar, Alan Peter Cayetano, Migs Zubiri, Joel Villanueva, JV Ejercito, Risa Hontiveros, and Jingoy Estrada.
The COC of the province of Lanao del Sur, for purposes of proclaiming the 12 winning senatorial candidates only. So instead of 173, we proclaim the winning senatorial candidates based on 172. The votes in the province of Lanao will no longer materially affect the result of the election for senator and will no longer affect the ranking for the position of senator.
The poll body also said they have invited President Rodrigo Duterte, Vice President Leni Robredo, Senate President Vicente Soto III, and Supreme Court Chief Justice Alexander Gesmundo. This is the first time COMELEC has invited the country's president to attend the proclamation of winning senators. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
For the news abroad, North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un ordered the deployment of the country's medical corps and commanded them to stabilize the distribution of medicines in Pyongyang City as the COVID outbreak continues to spread. Ryuji Sasaki reports why live. Good evening, Ryuji.
Elsie, the leader of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea or DPRK, ordered the military to curb COVID-19 outbreak after he had criticized the cabinet and public health sector for not rolling up their sleeves. Kim Jong-un called their action a botched pandemic response. He said medicine supplies weren't being distributed to pharmacies in time because of health officials' irresponsible work attitude and lack of organization. Authorities reported an additional 8 cases of death, bringing the death tally to 56 as of Monday evening. The World Health Organization warns of a rapid spread of the virus as the reclusive country doesn't have a COVID-19 vaccination campaign and treatment program. Just 6 days from its first COVID case, the country has tallied a total of more than 1.2 million infections. North Korea's state media have encouraged the use of painkillers, antibiotics, and unverified home remedies for patients suffering from coronavirus. Meanwhile, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol announced they are ready to provide vaccines and medical support to North Korea, but has not yet responded or acknowledged their offer yet. Elsie?
Thank you, Ryuji Sasaki, for that live report. Sri Lanka's new prime minister says the country is down to its last day of petrol as it faces its worst economic crisis in more than 70 years. In a tweet, Ranil Wickremesinghe said the nation urgently needs $75 million of foreign currency in the next few days to pay for essential imports. The island nation's economy has been hit hard by the pandemic, rising energy prices, and populist tax cuts. A chronic shortage of foreign currency and soaring inflation had led to a severe shortage of medicines, fuel, and other essentials. Ukraine declared the successful evacuation of almost 270 defenders from the Mariupol mill and into Russian-controlled areas. Ia de Vera will tell us why live. Yes, Ia, go ahead.
LC Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the evacuation on Monday was done to save the lives of the heroic steel mill defenders who, for weeks, held intact the last fort of the city of Mariupol. 53 heavily wounded fighters were evacuated with immediate medical attention in a Novoazovsk hospital, and an additional 211 injured fighters were evacuated to Olenivka with humanitarian aid. The evacuation is considered to be the completion of the Mariupol mission. President Zelensky, in his address, crowned the defenders as heroes of Ukraine. At the moment, the evacuated defenders are not considered prisoners of war while held in areas controlled by Russian authority. More fighters are left in the mill waiting for further evacuation processes, which President Zelensky stated will take delicacy and time.
Хлопців додому, робота продовжується, і ця робота потребує делікатності і часу.
The evacuation is also said to be a result of another setback of Russia's battle against Ukraine, as Sweden and Finland consecutively joined forces with NATO and Ukraine forcing Russian troops back to their Kharkiv border. With Russia constantly pushed back, much of the military action has been focused in Donbas, the industrial center of Ukraine. Elsie?
Thank you, Ia de Vera, for that report. And those are the reasons behind the news in other parts of the globe. I am Elsie Marcos, live from Auckland, New Zealand. Good evening.
The water level of Angat Dam, which supplies 97% of Metro Manila's water requirement, continues to decrease. However, the Metropolitan and Sewerage System assures sufficient water supply in the metropolis. Lelaine Moreno will tell us why.
Angat Dam's water level further dipped to 190.92 meters today. Although this might seem alarming, the Metropolitan and Sewerage System, or MWSS, assured the public that the agency's cloud seeding operations slowed down Angat Dam's water level decreasing rate. The minimum operating water level of Angat Dam is 180 meters, below which the National Water Resources Board would already have to cut back on domestic water supply.
Ito po ay masasabi natin sa normal operating level at mataas siya doon sa 180 na minimum operating level na binabantayan po natin. No? Kasi may mga pronouncement naman ang pag-asa ngayon base sa climate projection na ito mga susunod na buwan ay nasa estado pa rin ng La Niña, no? At hanggang sa mga matapos ang taon ay ang projection ay parang La Niña or normal, no? Ang climate projection.
MWSS assured consumers will have enough water supply until the rainy season arrives next month, but this will depend on the weather situation in the country. The water service company called on the public to conserve water to avoid water shortage.
Maging mas responsable, no, tayo sa paggamit ng tubig, huwag magsayin, no, magandang gamitin po ito ng tama. Ito pong mga tubig na nararanasan natin sa mga pag-ulan ay mas maganda po kung pwede po natin ito ay ipunin at ito po ay pwede natin i-recycle. Magkakaroon po ng mga karampatang pag-ulan para po makarecover, no, ng normal high water level na 212 meters.
Lelaine Moreno, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Our kasangbahay, as the world faces these trying times amid the pandemic caused by coronavirus, we are inviting everyone to join the Global Prayer for Humanity from Monday to Friday, 9:30 p.m. Philippine time through the social media accounts of Members Church of God International. And before we close, we will leave you with the word giving glory to God from the book of Proverbs chapter 8 verse 20. And it says, I lead in the way of righteousness in the midst of the paths of judgment. And those are the reasons behind the news, May 17, 2022. Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. And because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.